Welcome back, boxing fans, to another great show with Sean on boxing. So let's get to this. So, obviously, we have a few big cards coming up to end the year. Unfortunately, it's turned out that it seems as if all of them, if not most of them, are going to be pay per view, which is a little disappointing. Obviously, Turkey Al Sheikh told us that the Ring Magazine cards would not be pay per view, but unfortunately, that's not the way things are turning out, which is obviously disappointing for boxing fans. But to be fair, you got to look at the quality of the card to determine if it's really worth paying for, even if it sort of goes against what we've been told. As boxing fans, we know eventually we're going to spend money if something is good, if the quality is worth paying for, right? And that's what everything always comes down to. Whether you buy a new car, a motorcycle, a house, a hooker, whatever it may be, drugs, you got to make sure the quality fucking is fitting of the price. If it is, then it's a bargain. If it's not, then you fucking look somewhere else and try to find something that falls more into your budget or quality for the price. Here we have four fight cards, obviously two from the PBC and two from Ring Magazine. And we know the PBC consistently, initially, when they first started the PBC, said that they were not going to do pay per views, that they were giving us free boxing. It didn't take long until they spent all their $1 billion and then started sort of revoking that and consistently have put out pay per views since then. And now really only put out pay per views. For the zone, obviously they've come out and we've got mixed messages here, mixed messages there. Obviously Turkey Al Sheikh just came out and now there's a contradiction to what he's saying. We'll see if something gets changed moving forward. But as a boxing fan, obviously it's disappointing. I understand that if I want quality fights, I'm going to have to be spending some money, whether it's a subscription to an app or whatever it may be. That's why I prefer it if we were all fighting on one app and then I just have to pay one prescription or a subscription. And that way, at least I wasn't having my money diverted in multiple sort of different locations. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to be like that. At one time, it was HBO and Showtime, and then it was HBO, Showtime, and ESPN, and then it was HBO, Showtime, ESPN, DAZN, and it's constantly money that we got to fucking hand out. But that's true for movie apps and TV shows and everything else as well. So it's kind of how they're getting us through social media and the internet. At one time you could buy something, but now it's an ongoing monthly sort of subscription. Even for this, right now I'm using obviously StreamYard to make this video. I have to pay a monthly subscription to utilize StreamYard, and then I have an app I use to edit videos in CapCut, and obviously I have to pay a subscription to use CapCut to edit videos as well. So it's just constantly a fucking money drag. But that's my problem, not yours. So my question today for you was, if you could only afford or only wanted to pay for one of these up and coming fight cards, which one would you spend your hard-earned money on? Obviously, I saw people on my channel today really dick riding for the PBC fight cards, and I'm not hating on the cards, but to be fair, there's no legitimate pay-per-view fighter on either one of those cards, right? It'd be different if you had big-name fighters against big-name opponents, which is what exactly you're getting from the two Ring Magazine fight cards, right? And so you can understand why I lean towards Ring Magazine and DAZN and the fight cards that they're going to give us, as opposed to PBC. And it's not as if I'm trying to hate on the PBC. This is what they're giving us, so I can only comment on what's being put out there. When they gave us Errol Spence and Bud Crawford, I praised them like crazy. When they worked with Inouye to make Fulton Inouye, I praise them like crazy. If you give me great fights and great fight cards, I'll praise you for fucking making an effort. Like Turkey Al Sheikh Riyadh, those Bivol Better BF super cards that they put out. People really dismissed it, downplayed it, and didn't give it nearly the attention it deserves. Talked about how Shakur Stevenson should have been higher on the card, not appreciating the fact that Shakur Stevenson was on the fucking card, and he was supposed to fight Floyd Schofield, which was going to be a great fight. The Bud Crawford fight in California when he was fighting against Madrimov, and we were going to get who was it? Virgil Ortiz versus Tim Zhu, right? Like that was going to be a fight on that fight card. So obviously some of these fights have fallen off, but you could see the level of fights and the matchups that they were giving us. So we're going to look at that today, break down the specific matchups, which fights do I really think are going to turn out to be great fights, and which fights I think really are worth paying for. But feel free to leave your comments in the comment section below, and remember to share, hit the like, and yeah, let's get to it. So, dun dun dun, dun 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 dun. So of course we have the Pitbull Roach card, and this is a little disappointing in that we were supposed to be getting a Roach Tank Davis rematch, right? Which inevitably then we could have had Pitbull versus another top level 140-pound fighter. And that would have made this card that much better. You would have had more depth, and you would have had a superstar fighter in Tank Davis on the card, which would justify making a pay-per-view. But with Tank Davis going to fight a bullshit fight, which of course is not on this list because I would never put that on this list. Nobody should pay for that. But the Pitbull Roach fight is obviously a good substitute fight, right? But you got to be real. Is this the kind of fight you would pay pay-per-view for, right? I mean, neither of these guys are big-name fighters. They're only known as far as they are Tank Davis opponents, right? That's their whole leverage, that they both fucking were in the ring with Tank Davis. Outside of that, neither one has shown that they could sell on their own. So as far as the fight, it's a good fight. It's an intriguing fight. If this was on an undercard of another fight, I'd be excited about the fight, right? The style matchup is interesting, right? I feel as if Roach is going to win the fight, but at the same time, I can't underestimate Pitbull, who is a very aggressive, come forward type of fighter, even though we've seen him get outboxed in a previous fight by Valenzuela. So I think obviously Roach is not a similar fighter, not as tall and long as him, but I think he could do similar things that potentially could make him win the fight. So it's going to be an intriguing matchup. Then you got Mark Maxaya versus Michael Magnesi. This would be a good fourth or fifth fight on a card, but it's not a card that anybody would even really tune in for. Maxaya had his moment of glory beating Gary Russell in a fight that I thought he lost, but fine, he got the victory and then ended up losing his world title in his first title defense. Now he's fighting a guy who is really not that well known. Potentially, this could be a great matchup, right? That's the thing about some fights. You may not know the fighters, but potentially this could turn out to be the best fight on the card, in all honesty, right? But yet that in itself doesn't make this a great pay-per-view fight card. And then you got Janibek versus Lara. This is a very important fight for the middleweight division. A 3-belt unification fight. Potentially this is going to bring Bud Crawford in to the 160-pound division, right? And then potentially fight for his 4th undisputed weight division, which would be fucking unbelievable. And obviously having Crawford on this card versus the winner of this, that would be different. Then it would be a pay-per-view card because you have another superstar headlining the fight card. But at this point, you know, Janibek, who's the only really champion on this fucking card, a unified champion, he's not even headlining the card because he's not a popular fighter, not stylistically and just not obviously charismatically. Then you got Erislandy Lara, who obviously has always been, historically been one of the best fighters in boxing. But now he's like 42 years old. He's been fighting real low-level opposition at middleweight, looking good against them, but fighting low-level opposition. The fight we should have seen with Lara should have been a Carlos Adames fight earlier this year. And then obviously Janibek could be fighting the winner of that for undisputed. That would have far more legacy, far more intrigue to it. But at this point, Janibek's been fighting low-level opposition. Lara's been fighting low-level opposition. Janibek's in his prime. Lara is fucking well past his prime. I mean, it's not a fight that people are going to get excited about. It's not a fight everyone's going to be talking about at the fucking, the water cooler at the office. This is not the fight all the guys at the fucking barbershop are going to fucking be going back and forth with, right? Actually, none of these fights are that kind of fight, right? The Lamont Roach Pitbull Cruz fight, maybe people would mention it in offhand, but it's not that really fucking intriguing of a matchup. So when I look at this card, it's definitely, I think, the worst card out of the four we're looking at today. And it's not even close. I would definitely not spend fucking $60 to $80 on this card. If I don't get to watch any of these fights live, I don't fucking care. It's not going to hurt me or fucking, impact me at all. If I have to watch them fucking later on tape delay or whatever, that's perfectly fine. I have no problem with it at all. No issue. That's fine. Let's do it. No problem. Obviously, this is on Prime. Let me just look at my Prime right now just to see in Taiwan how much it's going to cost. Because obviously, these are American prices in Taiwan. Maybe because it's Prime Video in Taiwan, it's not really that expensive. The last fight I got from PBC, I didn't think was a great card either, but I think it cost me 800 NT. So that's not even $30. It was like 20 something. So with that price, I wasn't too fussed. I didn't worry too much about spending money to watch it. It was what it was. Sports, yeah, they're not even listing it in Taiwan. So I don't even know if I'm literally going to get that fight live in Taiwan. Let's see if I just write it in here. Pitbull versus Roach. No. In Taiwan, it's not listed yet. I don't know if it'll be listed later on, closer to the date. But at this point, it doesn't even look like it's available on Amazon Prime in Taiwan. So, what does that tell you? Even more reasons to not be excited about this fight card because they don't even think it fucking translates outside of the US market. But let's move forward to card number 2, which is definitely an improvement over that fight. Another PBC pay-per-view. Obviously, this fight on paper is not bad. It's obviously a deeper fight. You got, of course, Elijah Garcia, who's been exposed, but he's still a young fighter, so it's good to see him on this card. Isaac Lucera as well. We're going to get, of course, Luis Nunez versus Hector Sosa. Obviously, none of the fights I've mentioned are going to be fights that really get people's interest. Probably we're going to watch most of those fights free on YouTube, I would think, right? As prelim fights. So those are probably the fights people will watch. This fight's also not listed currently on my thing, but it has been moved to January, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, the October date was changed because of the injury to Fundura. Then you have Frank Martin versus Bartholomew. Frank Martin is almost fucking irrelevant at this point. Like, the last time he fought was when he got knocked out by Tank Davis. And how fucking long ago was that? 2 years ago? Like, literally, this guy hasn't fucking done anything since he got knocked out by Tank Davis. Now he's taking on Rances Bartholomew, who literally is one of the fucking worst fighters in boxing history to watch. He's terrible. I mean, the fight with him and fucking Robert Easter Jr. was by far one of the worst fucking experiences of my life, sitting through that fight and watching it. So I don't know how this fight's going to turn out. It could be a really fucking boring, slow fight where Bartholomew just controls the distance and Frank Martin spends all night trying to get inside to fucking land something hard. This is going to be Frank Martin's first fight at 140 pounds. Should be better at this weight. Obviously, he'll be more natural. But, then we get to the 3 main fights of this card. Jesus Ramos versus Shane Mosley, a middleweight fight. On paper, we can understand why this fight was getting done, because the winner of this would have been Erislandy Lara's mandatory. But Lara's going to be fighting Janibek. So now that in-house PBC stuff is no longer on the table. Janibek's a top-ranked fighter who's crossing over to fight on a PBC card to fight Lara because Top Rank obviously doesn't have a platform right now. And then you have Ramos versus Mosley, who's potentially going to become the mandatory for that winner of that. But nobody wants to see the winner of that fight, these guys. They want to see them fight Carlos Adames for undisputed and then potentially Bud Crawford, right? Which means Ramos and Mosley are irrelevant, right? They're just going to be sitting around because nobody wants to see them get in the way of undisputed unification fights, right? And a potential super fight with Bud Crawford to build on his legacy. Ramos was exposed against Lubin, couldn't get out of second gear. It was a very disappointing performance. And since then, he's almost been irrelevant, right? People at one point were pretty hyped on him, pretty excited about his upside. But based on that performance, he really disappointed. As far as Mosley Jr., what has Mosley Jr. ever fucking done? Has he ever done anything in boxing outside of being Shane Mosley's son, right? That's his claim to fame. Is that his father is a future, Hall of Famer if he's not already in the Hall of Fame. But as far as the son, nobody knows what this guy's done. Has he done anything? Really? I don't fucking know. Like, literally, I have no fucking idea. I scroll through this. I'm trying to find somebody that's ranked in the top fucking 25 of BoxRec so I could click on them. But none of these guys are even ranked in the top 25. Not even fucking Funduro. Where are you, Funduro? You're not even a top 25 fighter. Like, literally fucking, they got Chris Eubank Jr. ranked above you. Which is ridiculous, but... Okay, so there's Funduro at number 47 and Oshaki Foster at 42. So let's just jump at Oshaki Foster. I'm not even sure who's headlining this card. I think it's Funduro Thurman, but then the real bigger fight is Oshaki Foster versus Stephen Fulton, right? That's a fight that makes some sense. It's a world title fight, and you got two legitimate opponents. For Stephen Fulton, this is a potential fight that could elevate him onto the pound-for-pound list. If he beats Oshaki Foster to become a three-weight world champion, outside of one misstep to Inui, he's had a fucking spectacular career so far, right? And definitely lived up to, the expectations people were throwing at him. Let me just click. So Mosley Jr., what's he done? BoxRec. Every fucking time it fucking kicks me out and makes me do this. Like, BoxRec consistently shows you why they're fucking shit and why everybody uses it but mocks it religiously, because they just get worse and worse fucking year after year. They haven't got better. They haven't fucking improved. And you ask yourself, how does that happen? How are you around for this long but you never actually fucking get any better? Crazy. Ridiculous. Now I'm going to have to fucking go back and do all that legwork again. What a bunch of bullshit. I'm not a fucking robot. I just went through your fucking bullshit. What are you doing? Oh. In truth, we should all fucking just scrap our phones, throw them all in the garbage, never use the internet, and then we don't need to worry about fucking that fucking ID thing that people are trying to shove down our throats. I think if I fucking threw my phone out and I didn't have to use it for work, that would be fucking fine. In all reality. So quickly, come back here. Where are you? So Stephen Fulton. I'm just trying to talk about Shane Mosley fucking Jr. for fuck's sakes. It can't be that complicated. So there he is. Shane Mosley Jr., 22-4. The only good thing we can say about him is he's never been knocked out. Right? This guy, what's his claim to fame? Obviously, he lost early in his career, his third professional fight. Lost later on in fucking like his 12th professional fight. Then lost to Bone Adams, not a bad loss, in like his 15th fight. Then lost to fucking Jason Quigley, who got destroyed by fucking Demetrius Andrade. So that tells you everything you need to know. Since then, he beat fucking Gabe Rosado, who was fucking 100 years old by majority of decision, beat Demetrius Ballard, which I guess is a good win, and then beat an old ass fucking Daniel Jacobs in his last fight, and now is fighting Ramos. Ramos, this guy, he looks shell shocked because he can't believe he fucked up against against Lubin. Since Lubin, he's fought Jason Rosario, who's been irrelevant since he got knocked out when he was a champion, and then two other fighters nobody's ever heard of, and now Mosley, another irrelevant fighter. Like, the combined losses of the fighters he's fought since Lubin are fucking 13 losses in 4 fights. So 4 fighters he's fought have a combined 13 losses. Like, if you're fighting top 10 opposition to potentially become a world champion, you're not fighting guys that have that many fucking losses, generally, right? Usually 1 loss, maybe 2, probably 0 losses if you're fighting really high-level fucking opponents. So I don't think anyone's really stoked about fucking Ramos and Mosley. Funduro and Keith Thurman is a money grab. No one gives a fuck about that fight at all. The fact the fight was canceled, people are literally hoping that that fight's just going to be cut off and doesn't happen moving forward, because nobody wanted that fight. Nobody was paying for it. That's why they figure they fucking canceled it. Not because of an injury, just because sales were so bad. And then you have O'Shaquie Foster and Stephen Fulton, which, as I said, is the best fight on this card. But is that a pay-per-view fight? Like, that would have been Friday night, ESPN sort of fights. What was the blue fight Friday? You know, they had like better fight cards on Friday nights on ESPN that had like a special name. And usually they just come out with 2 fights that night, and both good quality matchups. And that would be that, right? That's what this would be. O'Shaquie Foster, 1-weight world champion, 4 losses or something. Stephen Fulton, probably the better of the 2 fighters, but obviously moving to his 3rd division to take on a real challenge to become a 3-weight world champion. After beating by Inouye, he bounced back, redeemed himself by winning his 2nd weight division, jumped up, and now is taking on a world champion in his 3rd weight class, right? You know, great matchup. I don't know if this fight's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to be an exciting fight. It could be, or it could be a real boring technical fight between 2 guys that don't want to make mistakes. I'm not sure how this fight's going to unfold. I do think Stephen Fulton is the better skilled fighter than O'Shaquie Foster, but you got to sort of say that O'Shaquie Foster's kind of been on a roll lately, even though he got robbed in that Kansakau fight. But Funduro, Funduro cherry picking fucking Keith Thurman and O'Shaquie Foster versus Stephen Fulton. Is that a pay-per-view fight for you? Let me know in the comment section below. Maybe you think it is, but neither of these cards are pay-per-view cards. If you wanted to do fucking Roach and Cruz, Funduro and Thurman, Frank Martins, Bartholomew, O'Shaquie Foster versus Fulton on the card with one of the other fights on the other card. Who else was fighting? I can't even remember. That's how fucking mediocre it was. But I know there's one other not bad fight on the card. So you put those 5 cards on the fight and you really stack the card with mid PBC fighters. Maybe then I could understand, just because of the depth of quality matchup, right? Let's go back quick just so I can see who that other fight would be. Lara versus Janibek. So you got Janibek, Isaac Cruz, Lamont Roach, right? A 3-belt unification fight. Another top-level fight of O'Shaquie Foster versus Fulton for a world title. Sebastian defending against Thurman for a world title. And then Frank Martin, Rances Bartholomew. Obviously, Frank Martin is a guy people had high hopes for. So we'll see how he bounces back and if he becomes relevant at 140 pounds. He'd be a good opponent for the top guys in that division if he can live up to that expectation. So that card right there, you don't have any great fighters. You don't have any star-studded fighters or any name sort of recognized guys. But because it's deep, I would accept it for pay-per-view. But by splitting this card up and then giving us a bunch of mid fights and acting like somehow we should be grateful, why the fuck would we be grateful? Like, people literally criticize Canelo Bud Crawford, saying that the undercard was mediocre. But that was free on fucking Netflix. Free on Netflix. It doesn't matter if it even had a fucking undercard. If you only had Canelo Bud Crawford free on Netflix, it was quality for the money that you paid. Right? Quality for the money you paid. Even if there was no other fucking fights on. And historically, there was plenty of times I watched fight cards where there was one fight and that was the only fight that was shown. Right? When CBC, CBS, ABC, NBC, whatever, whichever one consistently showed boxing, maybe it was CBS, they would often do two fights, but then if it was a big fight, sometimes, especially from the UK, you'd only see like the one main event that they sort of scroll over. So, but it doesn't matter because that's the fight everybody wanted to see. Not a bunch of mediocre fighters that nobody knew who the fuck they were. Those fighters you could throw on Friday night TV, Tuesday night boxing, Thursday night fights, whatever, right? There's a place for them. Throw them on Pro Box, right? There's none of these guys that are above Pro Box. Even Elijah Garcia at this point of his career, easily a Pro Box fighter. Isaac Teixeira, easily a Pro Box fighter. Frank Martin versus Rances Bartholomew, you could easily put that free on YouTube on Pro Box. Easily. Even Ramos versus Mosley, fucking free on Pro Box. I mean, Foster and Fulton is just a little above a Pro Box fight because there is a legitimate world title on the line and Stephen Fulton is a 2-8 world champion. So at this point, I say this card is better than the other one, the previous card. It's a much deeper card. Obviously, we don't know all the fights that are going to be on the Isaac Cruz card, but there's nothing there that's really exciting. Janabek Lara, it's an important fight, but I don't know if it's a good fight. And Roach versus Cruz, could be a good fight. Maybe to be the best fight out of both cards. Maybe. We will see. Then, of course, you got this card. And you know, this card, there's not much you can complain about. Obviously, Beterbiev and Dion Nichols, somehow that fight has fallen off. Let me see what AI has to tell me about the specifics. Because people told me the fight fell through, but I don't know exactly why, an injury or what happened. Did Artur Beterbiev versus Dion Nicholson on the Riyadh season boxing card get canceled? But as far as the card outside of that, obviously I would have loved to see Beterbiev get back in the ring, right? Obviously he's coming off of a loss to Bivol, and it would have been great for him to get back in the ring and get some rounds in before potentially getting an opportunity to jump back in with the trilogy versus Bivol. What did I say? Yes, the fight between Beterbiev and Nichols, which has been scheduled for November 22nd on the undercard of Riyadh season, was canceled. Here are a few additional details. Nicholson publicly announced via social media, just got word that my fight with Beterbiev was canceled. I'll share details about another fight soon. The fight was taking place in Saudi Arabia as part of the large card. No official reason has yet been confirmed of all parties for the cancellation. If you like, I can check any official statements from. No, it's fine. That's cool. With Beterbiev at his age, 40, injuries are a common and consistent sort of thing. That's why people like myself wanted to have the trilogy fight happen fucking ASAP. Because we don't know how much longer Beterbiev is going to be healthy and ready to fight. So the longer you stretch this shit out, the worse it is for an older fighter who's obviously had tons of injury issues throughout his career. But, of course, haters wanted to have Benavidez jammed into the role as if that was more of a historically significant fight at this point of time, and it's not. Then, of course, you have Benavidez versus Yard. As I said, great matchup, right? I would have been super happy to see him versus Smith. I would have been super happy to see him versus Anthony Yard. Both quality 175-pound fighters, both very good. Yard has shown in that Beterbiev fight that he fought, he fucking was good in that fight. He lost, but that's because Beterbiev is just fucking a monster, right? Smith just beat Buatsi in a great fight, so that would have also been a great fight. But of course, apparently he was lowballed, and he's a Liverpool fighter who's got a fan base, so he doesn't feel the need or necessity to go to America to be fucking lowballed on a dangerous fight. Who could blame him? For Benavidez, I don't know if this is the best opponent he's been in the ring with. When you think about Andrade, Plant, Morrell, Vosdick, and am I missing one? Plant, Andrade, Vosdick, Morrell. I feel like there's one other fight, but I can't remember. Can't think of it off the top of my head. Obviously, Morrell is a guy who's never fought a top 10 opponent in his career. Ian Hayting, it's similar to Frank Martin. Guys that look good, passed the eye test, but haven't fucking stepped up and took on legitimate opponents. So when they fail, when they step up, it's not a fucking surprise. It's kind of like when Charlo defended his title versus Erickson Lubin, right? What I said going into that fight, Erickson Lubin hasn't been tested by top 10 competition. So it's too early in his career to put him into a world title fight. Got knocked out in one round, right? His team fucked him over, just looking for a quick payday, right? He wasn't ready. They didn't bring him through properly to be prepared for a fight of that magnitude, right? You could say the same thing with Anthony Yard the first time he fought Kovalev, right? But now he's obviously got more experience. You can learn from losing. You know, he could see that his endurance really let him down in the Kovalev fight. And then versus Beterbiev, he was very good in that fight. I don't know what let him down. Was it lack of endurance later on in that fight, or just Beterbiev being more resilient and more sharp with his punches, not always loading up, but just letting his hands go with short concussive punches consistently that just broke him down and ended up stopping him. Against Benavidez, it'll be an interesting matchup, right? Benavidez doesn't seem to have power at 175 that he had at 168, but he's only had 2 fights now, right? So it's too early to write him off. So I think this is a great matchup. If Benavidez goes in there and styles and profiles or potentially stops him early, I think that's a fucking historically best fight of his career, right? That's what I think. You could disagree with me. That's fine. Then, of course, you got Brian Norman Jr. defending versus Devin Haney. For Brian Norman Jr., this is a huge step-up fight. He's never fought anybody that's ever been considered close to pound for pound in his career, and especially not a slick boxer, right? For Devin Haney, I don't think Brian Norman's the best opponent he's been in the ring with, right? You were in with Ramirez, Prograis, Lomachenko, right? And other fighters that I think potentially are all better than Brian Norman. Obviously, you fought Prograis and Ramirez later in their careers when they weren't quite at their best. That's true. But nonetheless, historically, they've accomplished more than Brian Norman has. We'll see what Brian Norman does because he's still pretty young, 24. For him, if he beats Devin Haney, that's a career-defining victory. For Devin Haney, I don't know if Brian Norman Jr. is a career-defining victory. That would definitely have to be Prograis and Lomachenko, right? And probably Kambosos. But nonetheless, for Devin Haney, if he wins, he becomes a 3-weight world champion, like Stephen Fulton, right? So, like I say, I think Stephen Fulton's in the conversation for pound top 10. I think the same for Devin Haney. I don't think Brian Norman at this point has proven that he's some elite fighter at this time. I don't know if he's better than a fucking Anthony Yard. I wouldn't rate him above Anthony Yard at this point, right? Anthony Yard didn't have everything easily fucking given to him the way Brian Norman did. But in hindsight, Brian Norman made the right decision ducking Boots Ennis to wait around to get a Devin Haney fight, because now he's getting much more money to fight Devin Haney, a guy who arguably is less dangerous than Boots Ennis, right? Not the power puncher, not the natural welterweight that Boots Ennis was. So Brian Norman has opportunities to make a name for himself. We'll see if he can. For Devin Haney, this is an opportunity to put himself right back into contention for one of the best fighters pound for pound. Then you get Jesse Bam Rodriguez fighting Puma Martinez to unify 3 of the 4 belts at 115 pounds. Puma coming off of great wins versus Ioka. I thought Ioka won the second fight, but nonetheless, Puma deserves the big fight, and this is a big money opportunity for him. For Bam Rodriguez, one of the criticisms towards him is he's been beating big name opponents, but all old and past their best. Puma Martinez is not young, but people wouldn't say that he's old and past his best at this point because he's been doing most of his work now, recently, and looking good during this period of time. So it should be a real intriguing matchup as far as Jesse, who's very skilled, dynamic, and Puma, who is much more of an aggressive, come forward, nonstop sort of volume puncher. So it'll be a really fun matchup. I do think Jesse's going to stop him, and then we'll see if Jesse ends up going on to become pound for pound, an undisputed fighter at 115, which will obviously elevate him into the top 5 of the pound for pound list. And in truth be told, he might actually be pound for pound top 5 right now. And once Usyk and Crawford retire, then there's not much debate. Then obviously he is a guy that should be considered in the top 5 pound for pound easily. Then you get, of course, one of the hot, young, up-and-coming fighters in boxing. Thanks to Keyshawn Davis dropping the ball, that ball fell right into Abdullah Mason's lap. And now he gets an opportunity to become a WBO lightweight world champion by fighting undefeated Sam Noakes. And this is probably the least intriguing fight on the card because Abdullah Mason is young. People know him, but they don't know him that much. And Sam Noakes is really unknown, a domestic UK fighter that most people feel is just going to shit the bed when he steps up in competition, right? He may surprise people, We've seen people do that before, but, seeing is believing. But this card overall, when you talk about Benavidez versus Yard, a real 50-50 matchup, Brian Norman versus Devin Haney, I'm leaning towards Devin Haney, 60-40. Jesse Bam Rodriguez versus Puma Martinez, I'm leaning towards Jesse Bam Rodriguez, 60-40, maybe 65-35. And then Abdullah Mason, Sam Noakes, I'm leaning towards Abdullah Mason, 70-30 in that fight. Better Biev versus Dion Nichols, I would have favored Better Biev probably 80-20 in that fight. So it's disappointing that it didn't happen because, of course, he gets a payday and he gets back in the ring after coming off of the loss. But maybe for him physically, it's probably better to not have to go through another training camp and take more punishment and have more injuries moving forward into a potential trilogy fight with Bivol moving forward. But overall, this is a great card and really legitimate matchups and potentially even better matchups than we could give credit for. Then the fight card I'm most excited about, and this is just because I have a lot of love for a lot of Japanese fighters. So putting all of them on a card like this gets me super excited, especially when you have such high quality fighters all on a card together in Riyadh season, right? Like, what's not to like? Like, even if you fucking hate Japanese fighters, you could hope they all get beat, right? There's still something for you to fucking celebrate and get behind. Their defeat, they're exposed, right? But there's also a lot of legacy online for this card as well. And we'll break that down as we go. So, of course, you got Ryota Tsutsumi, the Japanese Lomachenko, who's fighting Quintana Sanchez, a good fighter, quite a bit of professional experience. Ryota's obviously only had 4 professional fights, three fights, 4. So for him, this is just a continuation of his career. Obviously, he's going to be fast-tracked in his career, and this shows you because I think this guy is 12-1 right now, the guy he's facing, and Ryota is 3-0, so he's facing a guy with a lot of experience, right? And you'll see how he does on this card. Then, of course, you have his brother, who is only a fighter with 9-0 professional fights in his career, fighting James Dickens, who just came off of a fucking incredible victory against a fighter I like, a Russian fighter who he knocked out in 3 rounds, 4 rounds, uh, which fucking, hurt my heart because this could have been the fight I was looking forward to. The fighter I like from Russia versus fucking Hayato Tsutsumi, guys that matched up in the amateurs, right? I would have fucking loved that fight. I would really be fucking hyping that shit up. Let me just check that out. Where are we? But unfortunately, it didn't work that way because my man, I don't know what the fuck happened to him. Really, I don't know. The last 2 fights, the fight even before this and the fight before that one, his chin looked fucking Amir Khanish. Like it was really fucking destroyed, brittle. He could not take a punch, right? And obviously, the one thing you could say about Dickens is he's a hard fucking puncher. You can't say much more about him, but you could say that he's a hard puncher. But yeah, how did Tsutsumi? Sorry, he's 8-0. So this is his 9th fight, and the winner of this, Tsutsumi and Dickens, becomes the WBA regular champion. With Lamont Roach fighting at 140, that title is going to be vacated, and the winner of this is going to become the WBA super champion at 130 pounds, right? So Japan potentially is going to have another world champion who doesn't even have 10 professional fights. And obviously his brother is on this card as well. When we look at his amateur pedigree, where is it? Oh, no, sorry. I got Komatov and him mixed up. He beat Komatov. We remember Komatov because he got beat by Raymond Ford. Oh, Nakano is on there. There you go. Oh, I thought what's his face was on that card. What's wrong with me? Am I blind or just stupid? But okay, never mind. It's another Eastern European. But nonetheless, I was still looking forward to that matchup between those two very good amateurs who are now in the pros with less than 10 professional fights fighting for the WBA title. But now Hayato is going to be fighting James Dickens to become a world champion. You got Tego Imaga, who's fighting Armando Martinez Rabi. I know people don't know who he is, but Rabi is currently, I think, number 3 ranked by the WBA, right? Tank Davis's title. And if Tiaga beats Rabi, he's probably going to become a mandatory opponent for Floyd Schofield, who's probably going to be elevated to the WBA super champion because obviously most people feel Tank Davis is going to be stripped of his title, right? And that would mean Tiaga, a fighter who's had 9 professional fights, right? How many fights has he had? Not much. Also fucking very few. All these Japanese fighters fighting for world titles really early in their careers. Yeah, this is going to be his 10th fight. So he's 9-0 with 5 KOs. He's fighting a kid that is very experienced, Rabi, who is currently 17-0 with 15 knockouts, right? So a tough opponent. So right there, even the low-level fighters, people don't even know. Tsutsumi, his brother, and Tiaga. Ryota is going to be fast-tracked. We know that because he's part of Ring Magazine, blah, 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 ambassadors. Hayato is going to be world champion if he wins this fight. And Tiago is going to become mandatory for the WBA title against Floyd Schofield if he wins. Not that he's going to beat Floyd Schofield, but for a kid that's 10-0 with 5 or 6 knockouts, getting an opportunity to face Floyd Schofield for the WBA super title, that's pretty impressive. And if he doesn't get that right away, there's a chance he could get the WBA regular title coming off of this fight instantaneously. So, it's good for obviously these young Japanese fighters to get attention and win some jewelry right off the bat. Then you get to, of course, big name fighters. Kenshiro Taraji versus Wilbert Garcia Perez. Perez is the other champion in Bam Rodriguez's weight division. Bam Rodriguez is fighting Puma to become a 3-weight world champion. The last remaining title is Garcia Perez. Kenshiro Taraji is moving up to his 3rd weight division, coming off of a close split decision loss in his last fight for unified titles to move to his third weight division to fight for that other title at 115 pounds to become a 3-weight world champion, putting himself in line for a fucking super fight versus Bam fucking Rodriguez. Like, I favor Bam Rodriguez for sure over Ken Shiro. But for Ken Shiro to jump up and put himself in position for a potential undisputed unification fight versus Bam Rodriguez, fuck me, man. Like, you can't really be critical of the guy taking on that level of fucking opposition. Right now, he's fighting a world champion. And if he beats him, he's going to be right there in line for a potential Bam Rodriguez fight. I am hoping he fights Roman Gonzalez first, so that Roman Gonzalez gets an opportunity to face Kenshiro Taraji in what would be a great fight. Two older fighters matching up at this point of their career. Stylistically, it'll be a really good, intriguing matchup. And they're at the same level at this point of their careers. Bam is obviously much more above them. He's super primed, too dangerous for any of these guys. Should definitely move up and try to take on the winner of Junto and Inui. But if he stays in this weight division, I would prefer that it happens like this. Ken Shiro faces Roman Gonzalez. It'd be a great fight, intriguing matchup, stylistically a very fun fight. And then the winner of that can face Bam Rodriguez for Bam to become an undisputed champion and get, of course, another old man name on his resume because, that's what he's doing. He's collecting all the old men. But no fault of his own. You fight the best fighters available around you. And people talk about these guys fought people we don't even know. Well, for Bam, you can't say that because he's fought people literally you fucking know. Literally, right? And if he fought Ken Shiro or Roman Gonzalez, that's just another fighter you fucking know. And then, of course, you got the two big fights. And we know this is all a precursor for a super fight in Japan early 2026. Inui versus David Picasso, Junto Nakatani versus Sebastian Hernandez Reyes, right? Two undefeated Mexican fighters taking on two undefeated Japanese fighters for, their legacy. And obviously they could be the fucking banana peel that fucks up the biggest fight in Japanese boxing history. That's a reality. It's probably not likely, but it's a reality because both Hernandez and Picasso are undefeated fighters. They're super confident. They got nothing to fucking lose. Nothing. If they lose, it's went exactly the way everybody expected, right? And because of that, they have no pressure on them at all. Picasso is much more of a skilled fighter. Reyes is much more of a power puncher. So you got two very different styles as well. So that in itself is going to be super fun and super exciting. Overall, I think this is a deep card because for me, every fight, all 6 of fights on this card are super fucking relevant. Super relevant, right? And if I had to spend money, this indefinitely would be the one fight card I would spend money to watch. For sure. 100%. 100%, this is the fight card I would pay for. Me. But for you guys, I think the fight card that probably makes the most sense and the fight that has the most worth for boxing fans out of these 4 fight cards we talked about today is probably the David Benavidez fight card with Norman and obviously Devin Haney on the undercard. I think that's probably the fight card that makes the most sense for American and normal boxing fans to spend their money on. It's a great card. You got real relevant names that, boxing fans gravitate towards, Benavidez and obviously Devin Haney. And it's obviously a fight card that's going to get a lot of attention and get a lot of people talking about. Probably more so than the Japan versus the world fight card. But for me, if it was my $80, the fight card I would spend would be Japan versus the world. Because I fucking got to see the two Tsutsumi boys fight. I got to see fucking Inui and Junto Nakatani fight. So for me, even though maybe those matchups are not as competitive, maybe, right? You never know until the fights happen which fights are going to be more competitive or not. But on paper, I would say maybe this card's fights are more quality matchups. Maybe. But let me know what you think. If you had $80 and you could only pay for one of these four cards, the two PBC cards or these two Ring Magazine cards, which fight card would you pay for? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.